Part 2. The Reckoning. Power doesn't shout. It waits. And at exactly 9 a.m., Daniel Vance walked into the Sterling boardroom, not as a guest, not as a son-in-law, as the man who now owned 42% of their debt. The doors closed behind him with a soft click. No one spoke. The room was identical to the one he remembered. Polished walnut table, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, leather chairs that cost more than his first car. But something had changed. 3 years ago, he sat at the far end of a table like this. Today, they were waiting for him. Richard Sterling stood at the head of the room, still tailored, still composed, but thinner. The arrogance that once filled the space like perfume had faded. Now there was calculation, and something else. Fear. "Mr. Vance," Richard said carefully. "Not Daniel. Not son. Mr. Vance." The acknowledgement was subtle, but it mattered. Daniel didn't sit immediately. He let the silence stretch. He could feel their discomfort. And for the first time in his life, he didn't feel small in a room like this. He felt inevitable. He took his seat. The CFO cleared his throat. Sterling Holdings is currently facing liquidity constraints due to digital market disruptions and debt restructuring. Liquidity constraints. Daniel almost smiled. That was corporate language for drowning. A screen lit up behind them. Red numbers. Falling projections. Missed leverage ratios. Daniel had studied them for 18 months. Every vulnerability. Every weak seam in the empire. He didn't exploit them out of rage. He studied them out of patience. "You're in default within 72 hours, Daniel said calmly. The number landed like a verdict. 72 hours. The board shifted uncomfortably. Richard's jaw tightened. "Markets fluctuate," he said. "They recover." Daniel leaned back. "Markets adapt," he corrected. "Empires that refuse to adapt collapse." Silence. Then the door opened quietly. Emily stepped in. She wasn't dressed for performance. No galadres. No polished facade. Just a simple navy suit. Her eyes met his. 3 years. And yet that same flicker was there. Regret. Unspoken words. Unfinished sentences. "Daniel," she said softly. His name felt unfamiliar in her voice. He nodded once. Professional. Measured. The meeting resumed. But the air had changed. Richard spoke again, slower now. "You've acquired significant leverage, Mr. Vance. What exactly do you want?" There it was. The real question. Not numbers. Not assets. Power. Daniel stood and walked toward the window. The same skyline he once looked at from a cramped apartment balcony. "I didn't come here to destroy Sterling Holdings." The board looked confused. Richard didn't blink. "I came here," Daniel continued, "to modernize it." A murmur moved through the room. Traditional real estate portfolios are dying. Brick-and-mortar retail is collapsing. Supply chain volatility isn't temporary. It's structural. He tapped the screen. "Your systems are outdated. Your data infrastructure is 20 years behind. You built this empire on land and leverage." He turned back slowly. "I built mine on prediction." The words weren't loud. They didn't need to be. "You have 2 options," Daniel said. "Option 1, I force immediate restructuring. Assets liquidated. Board dissolved. Control transferred." Even Richard's breathing changed slightly. "Option 2. Daniel held his gaze. "You step down as CEO." The room froze. And you appoint me interim executive director for strategic transformation." A bomb without smoke. Richard stared at him. "You expect me to hand you my company?" Daniel shook his head slowly. "No. I expect you to save it." The silence now wasn't hostile. It was stunned. The empire wasn't being burned. It was being rewritten. but only if Richard surrendered control. The old man stood. For a second, Daniel saw a flash of the man from that dinner table.
Pride. Ego.
Dominance. But it flickered. And then it faded. You've planned this for years, Richard said quietly. Yes. Because of that night? Daniel paused. This was the moment. The emotional fault line. Not because you humiliated me, Daniel replied evenly, but because I realized something. He stepped closer. You thought power meant removing someone from a table. His voice lowered. I decided to build my own. Richard looked away first. That had never happened before. The board began whispering. Numbers were recalculated. Votes were implied. Richard finally exhaled. If I step down, Sterling Holdings survives. Yes. And my family? Daniel's jaw tightened slightly. They keep their name. A long pause. 3 years of silence collapsed into one breath. I'll call the vote, Richard said quietly. The decision passed within 30 minutes. Just like that, the man who once dismissed Daniel from a dining room was dismissed from his own boardroom. History has a strange sense of balance. Hours later, Daniel stood alone in Richard's former office. The same office where Emily had once stood behind her father. He remembered her silence. He remembered the weight of it. A soft knock. Emily entered. No board members. No audience. Just them. You could have destroyed him, she said. Yes. Why didn't you? Daniel looked at the city skyline. Because revenge is loud. But rebuilding is permanent. Power isn't humiliating someone, he said quietly. It's choosing not to, when you finally can. Her eyes filled, but she didn't cry. I was afraid, she whispered. If I spoke that night, I would lose everything. You did, he replied gently. The truth wasn't cruel. It was precise. She nodded slowly. I left the house 6 months ago, she said. I couldn't breathe in it anymore. Every room reminded me of what I didn't say. Daniel didn't respond. She reached into her bag and placed something on the desk. The yellow sticky note. You chose the silence. I read this every day, she said. He picked it up. The paper had softened from being folded and unfolded too many times. Why now? He asked. Because today, I didn't stay silent. He looked at her. You spoke against him in the vote? She nodded. For the first time, a faint, almost invisible shift happened inside him. Not forgiveness, but acknowledgement. I don't need the empire, she said quietly. I just don't want to lose you again. Daniel removed his wedding ring from his pocket. He looked at it, then at her. I built something strong, he said. Not just a company, a boundary. She understood. Are you asking me to earn my seat this time? She asked softly. Yes. No anger. No bitterness. Just standards. She nodded. I will. And for the first time in 3 years, he believed her. 6 months later, Sterling Holdings had restructured under Daniel's leadership. Digital infrastructure rebuilt. Legacy assets converted. Debt stabilized. Richard remained on the board as honorary chairman. Quiet, observing, learning. And one evening, at a gallery reopening funded independently by Emily, a minor investor made a dismissive comment toward a junior curator. The room grew awkward. Daniel watched. Emily stepped forward. That's enough, she said calmly. The room went silent. Respectfully silent. Not fear. Respect. Daniel met her eyes across the room. No words. Just recognition. Some lessons are painful. Some transformations are earned. Power doesn't shout. It waits. And sometimes forgives. Tell me something. If you were Daniel, would you have shown mercy? Or would you have finished what he started? If this story moved you, subscribe to Midnight Story Room, and turn on notifications. A new story rises next week.